Now we're going to talk about how to create strong passwords and how to manage them using a password manager. And I really want to underline that even if you have two-factor authentication enabled, don't make it easy on them. Make sure that you have very strong passwords as well. But, you might be wondering what makes for a strong password. I want to show you this comic that pokes a little bit of fun at passwords. So a lot of accounts, like Apple for instance, will force you to add numbers and symbols and capital letters to your passwords in order to make them stronger. But that usually, I don't know about you, but that for me just makes them harder for me to remember. It doesn't actually make them more secure. And so in the top row of this comic, the password is Troubadour ampersand 3. It has a capital T, and one of the O's is replaced with a 0 and the A is replaced with a 4. Um, but it's like, wait a minute, so which letter was capital and which O got replaced with a 0? What was the punctuation mark and what was the number at the end? Right? It's like, okay, it is a complicated password, but it's also really challenging to remember and not necessarily more secure. And in the bottom part of the comic, correct horse battery staple is actually a much stronger password because it is very long, and that tends to be one of the best predictors for a strong password, is it's very, very long and it's easy to remember. So to reiterate, good passwords are long, they are very difficult for someone else to guess, they are very easy for you to remember, and maybe most importantly, they are not reused across multiple accounts. So why can't you reuse passwords? Well, let's say that I use the same password for my email as the password for my online banking. If someone got the password to my online bank, then they could also get the password to my email, right? And that would be terrible. So if you can't reuse passwords, though, it can be really challenging to create long, secure passwords unless you use a password manager. And we're going to talk about password managers in a couple of slides. So here are some common bad password that you shouldn't use. If you have these in your passwords, you'll want to change them. So don't use things like birthdays, especially birthdays of family or children or partners. Don't use things like password or secret or QWERTY, QWERTY going down the keyboard. Don't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't use the same thing repeated over and over again because that doesn't make it any more secure. Don't use the names of your pets or your children. Really, anything that can be guessed from your Facebook is a bad thing to use in your password. And if you have it in your passwords right now, you'll want to change that. So I talked about how, if you have really complicated passwords that are long and secure and complicated, how are you going to remember them all? And I really like LastPass. It's a password manager that can generate these very long, secure passwords for you, and then it stores those passwords securely so you don't have to remember them. All you have to do is remember one password, your master password. And it's really important, like a big red warning, don't forget your master password or you're going to lose all of your passwords that you have stored in LastPass. Um, LastPass is free for personal use. I really like it. And remember that it can generate these strong, secure passwords for you. I think wherever two-factor authentication is available, you should be locking down your accounts with that. Um, where it's not, you should make sure that you have a really strong password. But you'll want to, really make sure that you're taking these security and privacy settings and, strong passwords, two-factor authentication. Take all of these steps with all of your accounts. But if you had to prioritize which ones are most important, lock down your email first. Your email account is the most important account to protect. Um, for me, before I moved to LastPass, I would always forget my passwords. And so I would use the Forgot Your Password link at the bottom of a web page to reset my password almost every time. And so those password resets, they go to your email and they don't require, in many cases, they don't require any additional information. Sometimes they might require security questions, but a lot of times it just goes to your email and says click a link and reset your password. So if someone had access to your email, they could, in theory, reset any of the passwords for any of your accounts. So it's so important to make sure that your email is really, really secure. So use two-factor authentication with your email, use strong passwords with your email. Google also has a security check that has many settings that can give you peace of mind in addition to two-factor authentication, so make sure that you walk through each step carefully. Now, you'll also want to make sure that your LastPass is set up with two-factor authentication, and that you have a very strong master password. So that's very important as well. LastPass has this security challenge that will rate your passwords for you and tell you how secure you're being. I really highly recommend that. But don't just think about your email. Think about all of the important accounts that you want to protect. Make a list of every account that you have. Online banking, loans, anything, to do with anything financial. Anywhere that you might have saved a credit card, like Amazon or Netflix, places that you've saved your address, right? Social media accounts. And what else? You want to brainstorm. Take some time, pause this, brainstorm every online account that you have and make a list. Keep a spreadsheet if that helps you, and track whether you've used a strong password, whether you're using two-factor authentication, and whether you've reviewed the security and privacy settings. And here, linked in this slide, is a sample worksheet that you can copy and get started with. Um, don't write down your passwords in this worksheet, but you can say whether or not you have used a strong password and two-factor authentication, and you've reviewed the security and privacy settings. One last thing is that many accounts will offer two-factor authentication. Not every account will, but use it where it's available.